Hey everybody, and welcome back for another video. This is the second of the Patreon funded videos that we've done, and this one's for Wolverine, which was the choice made by the patrons. This is going to be kind of a masterclass in how to really screw up based on your own lack of patience, and a nice little lesson in hubris, and me desperately trying to salvage it into something somewhat presentable. There's probably a lot more lessons in this than I'm going to be able to point out, but central to them is like stick to one of two approaches and don't mix them up, and that's one of the things that I kind of forgot to do here. So where I should have either gone with a fully sort of colored and painted out sketch or a completely painted piece, I kind of went halfway with one and then continued with another. And yeah, that was a poorly thought out idea, and it turned out less brilliant than it could have, I guess. Anyway, so as you see here, it's I'm trying to solve things first in line, sort of refining it and doing what I do. And this is sort of the first place where I went a little off the rocker. I should have at this point sort of had a thought about what I wanted to do with the Wolverine character. So when I'm doing like most character sketches, I start thinking about, you know, what is about this character that I want to explore. What is it that I want to show my my audience? What is it that I want to get out? And in this case, I kind of just went off of the stuff that I'd read and the stuff that I'd sort of researched a little bit, but I hadn't done a lot of work sort of figuring out the character. So I just kind of went for something a little bit sort of pointing out the obvious things about Wolverine. You know, his brutish barbarian nature and his ability to take a bunch of wounds and not die. And that lack of attention is gonna come back and bite me in the ass. That being said, like I think the pose is pretty kick-ass. You'll see there's a point where that front leg is gonna go rogue, and I'm just not present enough to notice the difference, and then it's gonna be, yeah, I'm gonna be trying to salvage it, and it's not quite gonna work. But it still ends up as an alright piece. Anyway. Part of the same issues that I had with the last video, or the piece in the last video, the Witcher Hunter, is going to come back here too. Like I'm going way too finicky with the line drawing. I'm doing all the stuff that isn't important. I'm adding all like the body hair and stuff, which is not going to turn out to be important at all. And I'm not focusing enough on like getting a character piece out of this. And I'm real hungry for like getting into the nitty-gritty rather than making sure that I'm doing all the right things. So this is a nice little masterclass in like things to look out for, things not necessarily to do. That being said, I had a lot of fun like researching Wolverine, finding out about his background in a all-Canadian superhero team, that sort of thing. You can see here that I'm outlining the character, doing all the silhouette work. And this is the point where like I none of the stuff that I'm doing at this point, the hair for example, I shouldn't be paying attention to that at all, but in my mind it makes sense at the time, and you know, I was just playing around. It's one of the luxuries, but definitely one of the things that I'm going to be looking out for in future Patreon projects is where to sort of be consistent with my own process and where to play around. And I feel like this was a worthwhile experiment. I got to have some fun, but I don't think it was the most effective way of working. And I think in the end, it worked out less fluently than it could have. And again, I'm overemphasizing details at this point. I had this idea of sort of really going into the detailing stuff on an early point and kind of keeping with it. And at some point, I just kind of abandoned that because it got boring, and it felt less sort of natural to do that. You'll also see pretty well in this piece how you can get away with a lot more in a drawing than in a painting. and that like for me at this moment the drawing seemed pretty good, and then the moment I started adding a bunch of stuff on top of it, things don't turn out as well as they could have. But you know, that's all a part of it. This is, you know, the whole point of like doing this piece was to break myself out of my comfort zone, and that is what it ended up doing. So I figured, you know, it was a bit of a complex success in that case. Yeah, you see, I'm breaking all my own rules here. I'm using a small brush and picking out details rather than taking the big leaps and you know, visually annotating what I want to do. So at this point it's still looking pretty alright, but I haven't made the necessary choices to pull this off, and there are some choices that I can remember making at this point that I will forget later in the piece. So when executing a piece where there's a lot of difficult elements, like the lighting here is going to be difficult, I should have definitely stopped and made some studies and figured out a bunch of these things, and I didn't, and so like that's on my own head be it, but again, I learned a bunch of stuff, so that's good in the end. Yeah, oh yeah, I started going for something kind of simplistic for the background. I kind of keep that up until the end, and I wanted something kind of affecting to sort of build this idea of him leaping into battle, and somehow that kind of pulled the piece together in the end, which I think worked. But at this point I'm starting to waver. At this point I'm kind of losing my momentum because the lighting is kind of there now, right? Like with the multiply layer alone. And so I'm just dithering. What you can't really see here is me sort of moving back and forth. A lot of the sort of stuff that gets deleted away does not get recorded. So it's me just dithering, just poking back and forth on the values and just trying a bunch of stuff without any real direction. And it's going to be a bit of an overused refrain. But yeah, I'm going on autopilot. And yeah, so here I'm starting to sort of play with the contrasts. And immediately I'm just going way too heavy, because again, like I'm lacking a little bit of direction and jumping in a little too heavy. So this is it's a good view on like these are some affecting brush strokes and applications that I'm doing. But in the end, because they don't have a particular end result in mind, they're not really serving any particular purpose. So you'll see me like trying stuff and then deleting it away and trying again. It might have to do with my mindset at the time too. I was a little impatient and kind of just like pushing through it. And so that's definitely something I'm gonna refocus on for the next piece, is to sort of really rejigger the whole approach and be more focused on purpose. Which is, like, ironically, this is the thing that I always focus on when I have students, and I always tell, you know, make sure that you have a problem to solve and you're solving it directly when you're doing it. And at some point, you know, you just kind of lose track. So anyways, the layer modes I'm using here are pretty much just soft light and multiply, and that's an old combination of mine that I'm pretty comfortable with. But as with anything, when it comes to painting, yeah, if you're not serving in a particular purpose, then you know you're going off the wrong end. Here is an interesting sort of approach again. Like I'm going for these. Yeah, I kind of actually like that. I kind of wish I'd gone with that actually. But this high contrast solution could have been cool. But again, I would have had to pick out a direct sort of lighting direction, and you can see, like, I'm still not catching myself. Because that could have been a good solution, but it just ended up not really doing what it should have been. So, as this is the longest of the videos we've done so far, it is kind of instructive that it is also the one that I would say, artistically at least, is the least successful. Though it is the one that I learned the most from. And though most of those lessons are like things not to do. So it's going to be more of that as the video goes on. The interesting thing to keep doing with this character, though, is to try and sort of figure out what was it that I wanted to explore with him. And what I really liked about Wolverine as a character is this whole sort of brute sort of hulkish strength versus how deeply sort of caring he is as a character. I will say, actually, for value, this is probably where I should have just stopped the piece, but it went further. That might have been a mistake, but a piece is what it is. It's a living thing. You can't, as Bob Ross so eloquently told us, no mistakes, just happy accidents. So, in the end, I probably learned more than I lost. But for the umpteenth time, do have a purpose when you work, and work directly for that purpose. So you'll see, like, me trying again and again. Like by this time, that leg, by the way, if you go back and see, you'll see that front leg, that it's a totally changed angle. It was angled down before, now it's angled more towards us. And that happened the moment I started screwing around with the values. And just about now, I'm starting to lose the value of cohesion that was working pretty well before. So now the secondary light is starting to challenge and subdue that primary light a little bit. And as I'm also working with the details in the primary light, I'm starting to break that down. I think about here, I kind of took a faithful choice of collapsing a bunch of stuff together and no longer like dealing with the underlying layers, which again, that might well have been a mistake. And now I'm just working with like a normal layer on top and a bunch of selections, and really just trying to look for ways to start pulling things together. And you'll see I'm doing that in the least constructive way, which is just keep noodling in details. I think part of the reason why I kept going for details was that this is for the Patreon, right? So it's kind of me trying to find a way to sort of approach these pieces both in kind of a new way and in a way that I can sort of explore technique a little bit and do some stuff. If you zoom in on the face by now, by the way, it looks like totally toothless because I'm keeping on repainting the face, trying to like make that light work really well. And I think the more I push it, the less it's working as it did, at least. And again, you'll keep seeing, like, I'll keep pushing on that face, and the hair will start changing over time too. There's a bunch of stuff that right now it's not really working anymore because I've taken it way too far into painting. So yeah, oh, this is that. And now we're into painting. So I keep zooming in and out at this point quite a lot. And thing is, if you think about that head and that hair at this point three-dimensionally, and you just turn it towards yourself, it'd be huge on the right side and like tiny on the left. So it's no longer really working three-dimensionally, and you'll see when you realize that someplace later and start making corrections. So I think if I was to redo this, I should have just done the whole body separately and then added like blood and splatter and everything else on top. And that's what I'm slowly realizing too. So I'm like painting away a bunch of the body hair. You'll see, like, if you go back and look at the sketch in the beginning, it's full hair, and I also paint in hair in the beginning, and then I just kind of erase it away. So yeah, 7 P's. Prior planning prevents piss poor performance. That was 5, but there's 2 more anyway. Prior planning and preparations prevents piss poor performance. There you go. So yeah, keep that in mind. Yeah, at this point again, like I'm just noodling details. This is a total throwback to the personal stuff I did before I was doing sort of full-time freelancing. So it's just me allowing myself much more time than I deserve to noodle on stuff that I should be solving much more elegantly. And I know it just sounds like me beating down on myself. And it's not entirely that. Like I'm still happy with a bunch of the stuff that I solved, and I'll point that out towards the end. But it's a little painful to go back and sort of just rehash all of this stuff that I felt like I screwed up pretty bad, and I should have just left well enough alone at some point, you know. But you get stressed out and you want things to work, and when they don't, it's hard to let go, you know. So yeah. So at this point, we're getting to a point where you can see like my secondary and primary sources are now totally embattled. The light hitting the top of his shoulders is kind of not much stronger or much weaker. At some point I'll flip him around and make this like the secondary light source more of like a top light, so it'll outshine the primary light at some point. But for right now, you can see like the light on the head, for example, seems to be coming at a bit of a different angle. So slowly but surely, these things are getting pulled together. Back to another aspect of this is the thing that I don't really know Wolverine. This was supposed to be kind of a chance, I guess, to sort of explore the superhero genre a little bit, and it just kind of brought me back that I never really got into superheroes. I never really got into the X-Men and all that. And I know there's probably some good stories there, but they're not stories that grab me very well. And so I had a hard time doing sort of enthusiastic research about Wolverine, because yeah, he's just a little. He's an angry dude with some knives for hands. And I'm sure I'm gonna get some hate in the comments for that one. But yeah, it was not an easy character to sort of get a grip on for me. I like to get to know my characters, and he didn't feel very easy to get to know. So yeah, I'm still on the whole kick of like keep trying stuff, keep painting, because at this point I'm kind of treating it more as an exercise rather than the attempt at making something that I'm gonna end up being like totally happy with. So I'm trying different lighting situations for the face, and it's getting kind of weirdly flat now. And again, like that whole imbalance between left and right is getting pretty severe. And at some point, pretty soon, I hope, especially from watching this, I'm gonna notice that and start making making changes. It's not the most exciting thing to watch, I guess, because it's a lot of detail noodling. But you can kind of, if you speed it up pretty good, you can kind of get a pretty good idea of the general sort of approach. Yeah, no, so at this point I started using, I keep using the phrase "at this point," but at this point I'm starting to use the smudge brush a little bit. I'm starting to break up some of those elements that I've been sort of pulling around for the last few hours, and really starting to sort of zoom out and have a proper look at this piece, and just realizing like, oh my god, I just have to try and save this now. I have to try and figure out where did I go wrong, and how can I bring this back. So it's hard to tell exactly what I'm doing at the moment. Oh yeah, so here I'm starting to try and sort of pull these arms in. I've been doing it little by little. You can tell, or you can see that there's a little like silhouette adjustments all over the place. And this is the moment when I start realizing that that hair makes no earthly sense at all, and so it has to like little by little be like reined in. So I paint in the shoulder there, and you'll see me sort of wrangle those sideburns a little bit, and sort of pull in the crazy hair as well. One of the things that I really found quite fun when I did the research was looking at like feral Wolverine, stuff like that. So there was an aspect to that when I went in for it. I kind of backed away from it a little bit because I got it was hard to sort of draw that out in a way that didn't just feel too weirdly cartoony, where it was almost unrecognizable as anything but like a super weird monster thing. So I kind of went back to something more classically Wolverine-ish. Maybe I should have gone, maybe I should have relied more on sort of my knowledge of character work rather than trying to make something sort of weirdly illustrative. But yeah, yeah, again, it's another example of me sort of not really making a choice, but kind of ending up in the middle of two things. So these are definitely things I'm going to take with me moving on to future pieces. Again, you can see me doing something that I don't really do very often, which is like playing around with the background, because I'm finding that that's a pretty effective element here, to sort of try pulling the piece together and give it more of a cohesive feel. Because a lot of it is in the implied movement of the character, and that is still kind of working. I do really dislike those arms now. They feel very detached, and little by little I try to pull that in too. But it is a weakness, especially when you're a little paranoid of being like a poor painter, like I am continuously, especially when I try to paint. And you kind of like, you have something that worked before, and you're not sure if it's still working, and then it's frightful to try and take it away and undo it, and so you're just holding on to it and trying to make it work and trying to make it work. But little by little, slowly but surely, I'm kind of pulling things together here and there, and it's a million little details being addressed and little tiny adjustments. So, but this is definitely like one of the more frustrating ways of working, and most of my sort of professional work technique is aimed at avoiding this. So for anyone who are trying to learn anything from these live streams and these videos, take this as a big old what not to do video. I should have, for example, for the backlight, I should have marked out the particular angle so that it would be easier to think about where cast shadows would have been, stuff like that. And I should have just chosen smarter angles for things. So again, like at this point, I'm starting to realize that I'm gonna have to sort of pull something out. So this whole, you know, I'm a character designer for the most part, and so most of the background stuff I do is less than nothing. It's usually just like a gradient or something. So doing something to kind of move the eye around and like doing some fun sort of action-y shapes and playing with some colors, that actually was a bit of a discovery for me. It's not that I haven't done that before, but it was something that didn't come to me when I was looking for solutions in this piece, and I learned something here. It was a satisfactory thing to sort of come into and be like, oh, that's fun to do. So I think I'm definitely gonna be trying in the future ones to sort of make the pieces more illustration and less character piece. Or, I mean, less character piece can be, that's broad, but I'm definitely going to be trying to sort of focus more on the entire piece rather than just small elements. So I think we're now moving into the period where I'm getting into sort of the finishing of the piece. So this is what was being done during the last live stream, I guess. So I got some really good feedback from the live stream audience when doing that, which was real nice. So you'll see, for example, those now weirdly disjointed back legs, or legs, getting a little work over at some point, and yeah, like I'm at this point, like if you're squinting at this piece at this point, there's so many weird values going on because I'm totally lost oversight. Yeah, it's a bit painful to go back and look at it. I have to re-emphasize, but the end piece I'm still quite okay with. So, you know, as we reached the end, it was fine. But yeah, you know, I'm pulling all my little lady tools and stuff out of the toolkit, and yeah, you know, I'm a little ashamed. I'm not too proud to say. I wish I had been more able to sort of tackle these problems on my own premises, on my own, you know, in my own way, I guess. And I don't love having to go back and sort of rely on cliche and rely on stuff that I don't necessarily think is like a good way of solving problems. But when you've dug yourself a little too down, too far down, you know, any ladder is welcome. So you know, okay, now I'm getting very sad about this, but sounding very sad, not sad about it. But these tools are useful, and they're great for pulling together a piece, especially when you're sort of going in weird directions. So what happened with the leg there when I repainted it, that was from one of the audience members on the Twitch. He just pointed it out, and the moment that was pointed out, that became so uncomfortably obvious that yeah, that was an issue. That was something that really needed to be solved. And the moment that happened, the movement in the character became better. Everything started like falling into place, more or less. Started getting sort of those core lines figured out, and so now it's kind of like just pulling itself into cohesion. I can still see a bunch of stuff that I'm not particularly happy with, but of the major issues, the stuff that really needed to be solved, I think most of it kind of got pulled in at the end there. And so now it's just like the last couple of minutes from the live stream, and I'm polishing and answering some questions and kind of adding some little details, and getting pretty happy about reaching sort of a more or less satisfactory end for the piece. And so yeah, I think it ended up being like a fine piece, more or less. I mean, give me your opinion if you can, or if you want to. But yeah, it's good to learn. I definitely learned a bunch from this. So thanks for watching, and you know, hope to see you on the next one. So yeah, cheers. Thanks a lot. Bye. Thanks so much to all the patrons who are supporting this stuff going on the Patreon, and giving us room and time to make YouTube videos and running Twitch stream, and some extra time to doing all these Patreon illustrations. They're pretty fun to do. Actually, they're more than a little fun to do. They are amazing to do, and it's so nice of everyone who joined in and who has decided to sort of spend in some money for this. Thank you so much. If you have the chance, head over to the Patreon. You know, give us a little nudge, and join in on the voting and everything. That'd be awesome. Cheers and bye.